everyone. So in today's lesson, we're going to be working on lesson 1.3 in our Go Math book or on your Jamboard. So if you don't have your math book, you can go ahead and use your Jamboard that I have attached to this assignment for each of you. So we're going to be working on properties today. Our essential question is, how can you use properties of operations to solve problems? You can use the properties of operations to help you evaluate numerical expressions more easily. And we're going to look at properties of addition and then properties of multiplication here too. A lot of times when we were looking at properties, these are things that we kind of do mentally to help us solve some different problems. So what we're going to do is break these guys down a little bit so that they're a little easier to understand. So if we look at our first part here, if we look at our properties of addition, the first one we have here is the commutative property of addition. Okay, so what it says is if the order of addends changes, the sum stays the same. So let's look at our example here. If we have 12 plus 7, and we switch them, and we have 7 plus 12, it's still going to give us the same answer. So what the commutative property of addition says is no matter which way we have those addends, so if we switch them up, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get the same answer, the same sum. Okay? The second one is the associative property of addition. It says if the grouping of addends changes, the sum stays the same. Okay? So now the key word with the associative property is grouping. When I think of the word associative, I think of an association. An association is a group, like if we have the parent-teacher association, it's a group of parents. Okay, so when we group numbers, we use parentheses here. So if we look and we have on this side, we have 5 plus the sum of 8 plus 14. So they grouped the 8 and the 14 on this side. If we look at this side, they grouped the 5 and the 8 instead of the 8 and the 14. So they just changed those parentheses. So here, if we do the 5 plus 8 first and then add the 14, you're still going to get the same answer. Okay? So that's what the associative property says. It says no matter how you group those addends, you're still going to get the same sum. And the last one then is your identity property of addition. The sum of any number and 0 is that number. I think that's probably one of the easiest ones. You already know 13 plus 0 is 13. 180 plus 0 is 180. Okay, so that's the identity property. And gang, for these, you just kind of have to memorize which properties go with what. So like I said, the commutative property, and one of the ways I remember commutative too is if you look, you have 2 M's in here in this the word commutative. If I change those M's, if I switch them, is it going to change the word commutative? No, it's not going to change it. So that's how I kind of remember it. It's like if I switch these addends, it's not going to change the answer. So if I switch the M's, it's not going to change the word commutative. It's still the word commutative. Okay. Now, if I look here, let's go down to then the properties of multiplication. So now we have the commutative property of multiplication. If the order of the factors changes, the product stays the same. So it's just like the addition up here, but now we're multiplying. So if you have 4 times 9, that's going to give you 36. And if you switch it and you have 9 times 4, it's still going to equal 36. So no matter how you switch those factors, you're still going to get the same product or answer. Okay, so then our next one is the associative property of multiplication. Remember, once again, we have grouping. If the grouping of the factor changes, the product stays the same. So look at our example. Here we have 11 times the product of 3 times 6. And over here, they have the product of 11 times 3 times 6. So no matter how I group those three factors, I'm still going to get the same product in the end. Okay, that's what that means. And then your last one for multiplication here is the identity property of multiplication. Now, if you notice, now we're using 1 instead of the 0 like we did in the addition property of the identity property of addition. So the identity property of multiplication, the product of any number and 1 is that number. So you have 4 times 1, that's going to equal 4. If I have 4,300 times 1, it's going to equal 4,300. Okay, so it's that number. Anything times 1 is that number. All right, let's look down here. Check out the example. Unlock the problem. The table shows the number of bones in several parts of the human body. What is the total number of bones in the ribs, the skull, and the spine? So take a look here. We have the part, ankle, ribs, skull, spine, and then the number of bones listed here. It says to find the sum of addends using mental math, you can use the commutative and associative properties. And once again, this is a huge part of mental math. These properties really help you to do addition, multiplication, do these things in your head. So let's look here. It says use properties to find 24 plus 28 plus 26. Now, could I just write 24 plus 28 plus 26 and go ahead and add them up? Absolutely, you could. The point of this lesson, though, is to kind of teach you how to regroup those numbers using the properties to help you find the answer. So let's take a look. On this side, we have 24 plus 28 plus 26. Okay, now what they're saying is we have 28 plus blank plus 26. So which number are we missing there? We're missing the 24. So let's put that 24 in there. All right. So what did we do? Which property did we use to just switch those numbers around? Well, we use the commutative property. Because remember, no matter how you switch up the numbers, no matter how you switch up those addends, you're still going to get the same answer. So what they did is they just switched it and moved it here. But now, if you look in this second part, they took 28. We have the 24. Now we need the 26 over here. Okay, but if you notice, what did they do here? We have parentheses now. So they grouped the 24 plus the 26. As soon as you talk about grouping numbers, that's going to be the associative property. Remember, association, associative. So let's put that associative property on there. And now you can look at 24 and 26, and hopefully you can see the 4 plus the 6, that's going to be 10. And then when you carry that over in your brain, you have 2 plus 2 is 4 plus the 1 is 5. So that's going to give you 50. So the reason they grouped those together the way they did is so that you would come up with 50 here. It was easier to add in your brain. Now when we look at this, 50 and 28, well, 5 plus 2 is 7, and then 8 plus 0 is 8. That's going to give you 78. Okay, so copy that. Maybe. So there are 78 bones in the ribs, the skull, and the spine. Okay? All right, so now we have this distributive property here. With the distributive property, and look, it's highlighted, so that means it's pretty important here. And this, I think, is probably one of the most difficult ones for students to pick up. But I think mentally in your mind, once you get good at mental math, but trust me, there are going to be some of you who just aren't always going to be great at mental math. I'm one of those people. It took me really long time to pick up the mental math. And even now, I'm not the best at it. And that's okay. What we're teaching you in this lesson is to help you figure out how to mentally do this using these properties. And I think the more you use them and the more you practice, it does help you to mentally figure out some of these problems here. So let's take a look. The distributive property, multiplying a sum by a number is the same as multiplying each addend by the number and then adding the products. Now, you're probably saying to me, what in the world does that mean, Miss Hummel? I get it. That is a very confusing definition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down for you. So they're saying we're going to multiply a sum by a number. So if you look here, we'd have to find the sum of, and that's how you read that. The sum of 7 plus 9 times 5. Okay? What they're doing is they're splitting this apart. So we take this 5 and we multiply it times the 7. And that's what they did here. And then we take that 5 again and we multiply it times the 9, which is what we did here. And then we add those two together. All right? So then you would take your 5 times your 7, and then your 5 times your 9, and then you add them. So you're going to get the same thing over here as you would have gotten over here. All right? So let's look down a little bit here. The distributive property is also used with multiplication and subtraction. I'll be honest, I think that's a little harder for a lot of kids just because they're not as strong in subtraction. I'm actually better at addition myself, so I find the addition way of splitting numbers is a little easier. But here's an example they gave. So they said 2 times the difference of 10 minus 8. So now on this side, they split it. They took, remember, the 10 times the 2. And then that 2 times the 8. And then you subtract those two products. So 2 times the 10, you can figure that out, would be 20. Minus 2 times 8 is 16, right? So now what's 20 minus 16? 4. Your answer would be 4. Okay? So if we did it over here, you'd have to do what was in the parentheses first, which we didn't really get to that yet. These are numerical expressions here. So 10 minus 8 is 2, and then 2 times 2 is 4. So you get the same answer no matter which way you did. Let's check out this distributive property. Okay, so what they're doing here, we have 8 times 59. They split this 59 into an addition problem. So what did they make it? They made it 50 plus 9. All right, so then over here we have 8 times, let me get this, guys, it's easier for me to type, 50. Remember, they broke that up into 50 plus 9, that 59. Don't know why that came back. Get out of here. All right, it doesn't want to leave. Ah. All right, so we have 50 plus 9. Well, look here, they says use a multiple of 10 to write 59 as a sum. So a multiple of 10 would be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, so on and so forth. So 50 is a multiple of 10 plus 9. Okay? So our next part then, maybe I can get rid of it this way. Are you going to get out of here? I don't know why it did that. It's weird. All right, now it's doing all kinds of wackadoodle things here. Guess it's just going to have to... Oh, there it goes. Okay, that's good enough. All right, so now remember when you're doing the distributive property, you're distributing that 8 to each of those addends. So with the first part of this, you're going to have what times 50? Remember, 8 times 50. So we need to put our 8 in there. And then then you have to distribute it 8 times 9. So over here, we're going to put our 9. I'll just leave it big. All right, now we look at that, and that's a little easier to do in our heads, right? Because 8 times 5 is 40, and then you add a 0, you get 400. And then 8 times 9, that's a basic math fact, so you should know your basic math facts by now. If you don't, I suggest you really practice them and get to know them, because as you get older, you are going to struggle with math if you don't know your basic math facts. So now we take that 400 and we take 72 and we add them together, and you'd get 472. Oh, hey, whoa. 472. There we go. Okay. So what we did is we broke it down so that it would make it easier for us to mentally do this in our heads. All right. So we're taking we're going to look down here at the same problem, but now another way to do it would be to use subtraction. Okay, to me this one's a little harder, but you can try it, give it a go. If it's a little easier for you, that's fine. We have 8 times 59. Remember, now we need to break down that 59. So what they're saying is use a multiple of 10. So once again, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. But since we're subtracting, you want to use 60 here, because 60 minus 1 is 59. All right. Now we distribute that 8 times the 60. So in here we bring down that 8. 8 times 60. And then over here it would be 8 times 1, because that's the other number. Okay, now we looked at 6 times 8 is 48. You add your 0. So we have 480 minus 8 times 1 is 8. And when you subtract 480 minus 8, you get the same answer, 472. Okay, those of you who are good at subtraction, that might be an option for you to try it out. All right, here we have complete the equation and tell which property you used. So let's take a look. You have 23 times blank equals 23. So let's think about it. It says the number times 1 is equal to itself. It pretty much told us what we're doing here, because for 23 times 1 is 23. So which property is that? It's the identity property. In this case, we're multiplying, so it's a multiplication. And it's ginormous, so let's bring it down. There we go. Now over here we have 47 times 15. So they have 15 times blank. Well, we're missing the 47. So what did we do here? All we did was the switcheroo. Changing the order of the factors does not change the product. So if you switch them, go back and remember, okay, if we switch them around, like if I switch the M's, it's still the same word. It's the commutative property. And we're multiplying here, so it's of multiplication. All right, it's going wackadoodle again. Ah! All right, bring that guy down here. All right, let's go to our next page. All right, it says use properties to find 4 times 23 times 25. So now, there are times when you're working on a problem and you can use more than one property. So if we look here, which one are we missing? We have 23 blank and 25. So we're missing that 4, right? Put that 4 in there. So all we did was we switched the numbers around. So remember, when you switch them, it's the commutative property. Commutative, no 1T. Okay, commutative. Just flop them. Now, in this case, if we bring this 4 directly down here, and we bring this 25 down, now what they did is they grouped them. They grouped the 4 times 25. Anytime you're grouping them, then that's going to be the associative property. So the first move we did, we used commutative. Now we group them, so it's associative. Well, now when you look at it and you think about it, 25 times 4, well, think about how much 4 quarters is, right? It's $1. 25 times 4 is 100. And then 100 times 23, well, you know what 23 times 1 is. It's 23, and then you have how many zeros? 1, 2. So you add 2 zeros. There's your answer. So we use 2 different properties to find the answer mentally, and that's okay too if you do that. Okay, and you know what I forgot? Wakama. All right. Now, this one's saying use properties to find the sum or product. Okay, so we're checking out 89 plus 27 plus 11. Now, some of you might be saying to yourself, well, Miss Hummel, sometimes these properties are confusing. Can I just add them? Sure. If you're just trying to find the answer, absolutely you can. The whole point of this is to try these different properties to help you solve them mentally, though. So if you want to add them up and then check to see if your answer is correct, that's fine. But when I look at these numbers, the first thing I think to myself is, what order would help me to figure out the answer? So in my head, I'm thinking to myself, if I have 89 and I have 11, and I add those two together, those two are easier for me to add together and then add the 27. So here, if I put 89 plus, oops, not equals, plus 11 plus 27. If I do those, if I rearrange them, well, right there, I just use the commutative property, okay? But then if I group them, and I add these two together first, 89 plus 11 is 100. And then if I add the 27 to it, that's going to give me 127. Okay, do you see how I did that, how I broke that down? So then which property did I use here? Well, I used 2. I actually used the commutative and the associative. So you can use more than one, and that's okay if you do that. I'm just going to turn this a little bit. Put this over here so we can see it. All right, so then let's try this one. All right, we have 9 and we have 52. Now, when I see 9 times 52, one of the ways I think to myself right away is if I use the distributive property and I split up this number and I make it 50 plus 2. Okay, and then I distribute it. So if I do that, I'll take 9 times 50, and I'll put my parentheses here, and then I add 9, because we have to distribute this 9 again. 9 times 2. Okay, if I do that, I use the distributive property. Now I can do 9 times 5 is 45, and add the 0, it's 450, plus, 9 times 2 is 18. Come on, 18, there we go. Now in my head I can add those guys up. So 50 plus 10 is 60, plus the 8 is 68. So it's 468 is my answer. And in that case, we use the distributive property. I'm just going to put that down here so we can see it. All right, let's look at number 4. We have 100 plus 0 plus 39 plus 13. Right away in my head, I'm trying to figure out what can I move around to make it easier in my brain. So I look at this and I see the 13 and I say, well, 13 plus 7, I can do that. That's going to give me 20. So let me do this, 107 plus the 13, and I'm going to group those because like I said, those are easier for me to quickly add. And then oops, wrong one. And then I can add that to the 39, right? So like I said, 107 plus 13 is going to give me 120 plus the 39. Can you figure that one out? 120 plus 39, it's 159. Okay. So what property did we use for that one? We regrouped them. First, I switched them. I switched the numbers around. So once again, it was commutative, but then I grouped these two to make it easier to mentally add. So once again, it was the commutative. Come on. Oh, it's not copying. Let's try to clone it. Nothing's working. Oh, now it's going all over. Clone. Growing gray hairs, just trying to figure out how to get this over there. Now let's copy it and paste it. Hey, get over here. Where are you going? Maybe I don't have my pointer on. There we go. All right, commutative and associative. Let's just look at number 5 and 6 real quickly. So they want us to complete the equation and tell which property. So we have 9 times the product or the sum of 30 plus 7 equals 9 times blank plus 9 times 7. Well, if you look at that, what did they do? They split up the number 37 into 30 plus 7. So right here, we need a 30. 9 times 30 plus 9 times 7. Which property was that? It's going to give us the distributive. Okay. Over here, 0 plus 47. That's a tough one, right? It's 47, right? And which property is it? Well, it's the identity property. I think that's one of the easiest ones. And that's identity property of that one's addition, because we're working with addition. And this one was the distributive property. Move this up. All right. All right, so what I'm going to do here, hopefully you're starting to pick this up a little bit more. What I'd like you to do now is pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and practice number 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 on your own, and see if you can figure them out. For this one, you have to use properties to find the summer product. So try some of these properties and see if you can do mentally solve these problems here for 7 through 11. And then for your homework tonight, what I'd like you to do is do the odds. Let me make sure I have that right here. Yes, I want you to do the odds. So I want you to do numbers 3, 5, 7, and 9 for your homework tonight. I'd also like you to go on to your lesson on Classroom. I have your homework listed on here. So before you leave today, I would like you to go ahead and do the exit ticket for 1.3. Also, you can either turn in your Jamboard if you did your work on your Jamboard, or if you did your homework in your math book, I'd like you to take a picture of it and upload it into this assignment so that I can check it out. If you have any questions, let me know.